AITA for not following the financial rules my husband set many years ago. I started earning more than him, and he didn't like it and started sabotaging it. When my husband and I first moved in together, one of the earliest conversations we had, after figuring out whose couch to keep and whether we actually needed 3 coffee makers, was about money. We were both working regular full-time jobs, and we agreed that a certain percentage of our income would go into a joint account to cover rent, utilities, groceries, household expenses, the basics. Anything left over from our individual salaries was our personal spending money. It was simple, it was fair, and it worked well for us. At the time, my husband also had a side business he was passionate about. I won't go into too much detail for privacy's sake, but it was a creative-type venture that involved selling custom products online. He was the one who brought it up during our financial discussion. He said, very clearly, that anything he made from that side business was going to be his personal income. Not part of our joint contributions. Just his. He emphasized that it wasn't a stable income source and could fluctuate wildly, so he didn't want to commit it toward bills or shared responsibilities. I honestly didn't see any issue with it. He was putting in the work, it was his baby, and it made sense to keep it separate. I agreed without hesitation. And for the first few years, he was doing really well with it. Sometimes bringing in $300 to $500 a week, sometimes even more. There were a few months where he easily cleared a couple grand. He used that money to buy all kinds of stuff, new computer parts, the latest game consoles, collector's items, massive boxes of card games that cost more than our grocery bill. I watched as packages came almost every week, and he'd excitedly open them like it was Christmas morning. I never complained. I never asked him to contribute more. I never suggested we should change the arrangement. After all, it was his side hustle and his money, just like we agreed. Meanwhile, I didn't have anything like that. My full-time job covered my half of our expenses and gave me a little breathing room, but if I wanted to buy something big, like a nice coat or a new phone, I had to plan and save for it over months. I did feel twinges of jealousy sometimes, seeing him treat himself so freely while I was constantly weighing every purchase. But I always reminded myself that fairness isn't always about things being equal, it's about things being agreed upon. Things started changing a couple of years ago. His side business hit a rough patch. Orders slowed to a trickle. He ran into issues with suppliers and quality control. Algorithms changed. Demand dipped. Whatever the reason, his side hustle that once brought in hundreds per week now barely made $50 on a good week. And more often than not, it was nothing. At first, he stayed optimistic and said it was just a slump, but over time it became clear that the business wasn't bouncing back the way he hoped. Then last October, I started my own side project. It wasn't even planned. I picked up a hobby during some downtime and casually posted about it on social media. To my shock, people loved it. They asked if I sold my creations. So I set up a little shop, thinking I'd maybe make a couple $100s a month to set aside for fun things, maybe a nice dinner out or a day trip for the family. Except it took off. By the end of the year, I'd made more than $8,000 in sales. I could hardly believe it. I poured a lot of hours into it, of course, staying up late working on orders, handling customer messages, learning how to manage logistics and inventory. But it was mine, and it was thriving. And I used that money in exactly the way I said I would. I paid for family days out, upgraded birthday and Christmas gifts for the kids, and even put down a deposit on a holiday for all of us, which my husband was fully on board with. At first, he seemed proud. He'd tell his friends that I had a little business now and that I was doing well. But I started to notice a change in his tone over the past couple of months. He'd make little comments, offhand jabs like, well, must be nice to have a magic money machine, or, I guess I'm the only one who remembers what budgeting looks like. I tried brushing it off. I figured maybe he was just feeling discouraged about his own business struggles, and it wasn't really about me. But then came our son's birthday this week. I bought him an iPad, nothing over the top, just a refurbished one that I got a great deal on. He's been really into digital art lately, and I wanted to support that passion. He lit up when he opened it. It felt like such a joy to be able to give him something meaningful without worrying about how to squeeze it into the budget. My husband, on the other hand, was livid. He didn't say much at first, but I could feel the tension radiating off him. Later that night, it all came out. He accused me of being selfish, of flaunting my success while he was struggling. He pointed out that he hadn't bought himself so much as a new video game in months, while our son was getting an iPad and I was planning holidays and outings. He said it was unfair that he had to keep cutting back while I got to splurge. Then he said that since I was now making so much extra income, I should start putting more money into our joint account, so that he could keep more of his paycheck for himself. I was stunned. I reminded him of the agreement he made, that side income was personal income. I told him I had no issue sticking with what we agreed to. I wasn't asking him to change anything. All our bills are paid. The joint account is fine. And it's not like he isn't benefiting. The family trips. He's coming along. The holiday I booked. He's going. The extra joy at Christmas and birthdays. He's part of all of that. He tried to say it was different now because he hadn't made that kind of money in a long time. But I pushed back. I told him that when he was making all that extra money, we didn't change our budget. He never offered to put more into the joint account. He never adjusted the arrangement in my favor when I was scraping together savings to buy things that he could afford with a week's profit. I sat there quietly while he bought luxury items month after month. I never asked for a single thing. He didn't like that. He said I was being cold and unfair. That I wasn't seeing how hard it is for him to watch me succeed while he's stuck. He called me a few choice names I won't repeat, and then he stormed out. Now I'm sitting here, wondering if I did the right thing. Part of me feels a pang of guilt, because I do know what it's like to feel jealous or left behind. I was that person, for years. I remember how it felt to say, no, I can't afford that right now, while watching someone else just click and buy whatever they wanted. But I can't help but feel jaded, too. Like now that the shoe is on the other foot, suddenly the rules are supposed to change. And I don't think that's fair. If I put more into the joint account now just to keep the peace, am I setting a precedent where my hard work is only respected when it benefits him directly? I don't know. Maybe an extra $100 a month isn't worth this fight. But it feels like it's not really about the money, it's about what it represents. I finally have something that's mine, something I built and earned, and I want to hold on to it without guilt. So now I'm left wondering. Am I the asshole for refusing to change the rules just because they no longer work in his favor? Update 1. Hi again, I didn't think I'd be back with an update so soon, but things got weird quickly. After our big blowout about my side income, the house settled into this heavy, simmering silence. No apologies, no further accusations, just that kind of quiet that wraps around everything and makes even small interactions feel loaded. Jason didn't mention the fight, and I didn't push it either. We were polite, in that stiff, surface-level way that couples can be when they're not ready to unpack the deeper mess underneath. We went through the motions of daily life, but there was this unmistakable weight between us, like the air itself was resentful. Then, about a week later, Jason approached me one evening while I was folding laundry in the living room. I could tell immediately that he had something rehearsed. He had that oddly formal posture he gets when he's trying to look like the reasonable one. He said he'd been thinking a lot about our disagreement and had come up with what he called a compromise. That's when he introduced the concept of what he dubbed a luxury approval list. He explained, with all the seriousness of a corporate pitch, that from now on, any purchase over $100 that wasn't an essential item, his term, not mine, should be mutually approved. It wouldn't matter whose money was being used or whether the purchase was a gift, a treat, or something fun for the family. If it didn't count as a necessity, we would have to talk about it and agree first. He claimed it was about maintaining financial harmony and ensuring that both of us felt equally involved in larger spending decisions. I blinked at him, genuinely waiting for a laugh or a smirk, something to show he was at least half joking. But he was completely earnest, proud even, like he had solved the great problem of our marriage with this bureaucratic little form of relationship governance. I asked him, point blank, if this was a rule he would have suggested back when he was regularly ordering $100 video games, new GPU cards, limited edition collectibles, and boxes of card packs that cost more than our monthly internet bill. He immediately got defensive. His response was that back then it was different, because he wasn't making me feel bad. That sentence clanged around in my head like a dropped pot. So, to be clear, the issue wasn't about financial balance or shared responsibility, it was about his ego. The purchases weren't the problem, who was making them and how it made him feel was. I told him outright that this didn't feel like a compromise. It felt like control, plain and simple. He wasn't proposing this because he cared about budgeting or teamwork. He was proposing it because he didn't like watching me succeed without him. I told him I wasn't going to agree to a rule that essentially amounted to financial surveillance, especially on money I'd earned independently. This was income one generated by building something from scratch, outside of my regular job, outside of our shared obligations. I didn't micromanage his purchases when he had that freedom, and I wasn't going to tolerate it now that I finally had a little of my own. He didn't take that well. He got angry again, although quieter this time, in that cold, clipped tone that's somehow worse than shouting. He accused me of being selfish, of refusing to compromise, of caring more about my independence than about our relationship. Then he left the room, slamming the door behind him just enough to make a point, but not quite enough to make it dramatic. For the next few days, we barely spoke beyond the necessary logistics of life. Meals, errands, reminders about appointments, it was all transactional. No warmth. No connection. Just the ghost of a marriage running on autopilot. I caught him staring at me a few times when he thought I wasn't looking. Not in a loving or wistful way, but with this tight, closed-off expression that I couldn't quite name. Resentment? Jealousy? Disappointment? I wasn't sure, and I wasn't sure I wanted to know. The whole situation started churning around in my brain in ways I couldn't switch off. I found myself re-examining everything, every past conversation, every financial choice, every gift or experience I'd funded in the last few months. I thought about how thrilled I'd been to surprise our son with an iPad he'd been dreaming of for a year. I thought about the joy on his face during the weekend trip to the zoo I paid for, or the excitement of booking a holiday I thought we were all looking forward to. But now, all of it felt tainted. Like instead of seeing these things as gifts or joyful moments, Jason had catalogued them as points of personal failure. As reminders of what he used to have and no longer did. And that's when I started really unpacking what was going on. This wasn't just about money. It wasn't even about fairness, if I'm honest. Because if it were, he would have come to me with empathy and transparency. He would have said, "Hey, I'm feeling left behind and struggling with my own confidence. Can we talk about it?" Instead, he masked his insecurity behind rules and approval lists, trying to reassert some kind of control over a situation that made him feel powerless. And as much as I wanted to believe we were just having a rough patch, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was revealing something deeper about how he sees me, and how he sees our relationship. That my success wasn't something to be celebrated, but something to be managed. That my independence was a threat, not a strength. That as long as he was the one thriving, everything was fine, but the moment that dynamic shifted, he had to re-establish balance by limiting me. I haven't said any of this to him yet. Honestly, I don't even know where to start. I'm still trying to figure out how I feel, let alone what I want to do. But I can't deny that something has shifted. Something I can't unsee. I used to think we were a team. Now I'm starting to wonder if we've just been taking turns winning. And I'm starting to wonder if this was really about money or if it was about power, pride, and a bruised ego. Update 2. Things got worse before they got better. It had been a couple of weeks since the luxury approval list debacle, and while Jason and I were still coexisting under the same roof, it felt like we were doing so from opposite ends of a very large, very tense canyon. Our conversations were clipped and efficient, laundry's in the dryer, I picked up groceries, your package came today. But emotionally, we were just orbiting around each other with growing friction. I kept trying to push forward, focus on my side business, keep the household steady, and keep things normal for our son. But that quiet wait, the one that started after the first big fight, was now dense enough to feel like its own presence in the house. Then something happened that pulled the rug out from under me entirely. I was reviewing our joint account one morning. I do it regularly, just to make sure bills are covered and nothing weird has gone through. That's when I noticed it, $200 had been withdrawn a couple of days prior. No notation, no context, just a transfer to an unknown external account. I immediately felt a rush of confusion and anxiety. Jason and I had always kept our joint account tightly organized. It was our shared space. Rent, utilities, insurance, food, that's what it was for. We both had our separate accounts for anything else. This wasn't normal. I waited until later that night to bring it up. I asked Jason about the withdrawal, assuming there had to be a logical explanation, an overlooked bill, maybe he covered something we'd talked about and I'd just forgotten. But he was almost disturbingly casual about it. He told me he'd transferred it into a new account he had just opened, which he called, without an ounce of irony, our Fairness Fund. He explained that this new account would be a place where I could deposit a portion of my side business profits, an amount that, of course, he would help determine, and that he could draw from whenever he felt like I was overspending on the family. The purpose, according to him, was to level the playing field. If I bought something big, or paid for a nice dinner, or took our son somewhere fun, he could take an equal amount for himself to spend as he saw fit. He believed this would restore financial equilibrium. I was stunned. Not just by the sheer arrogance of it, but by the fact that he'd done it without saying a word to me. When I asked why he hadn't told me about it beforehand, he looked me straight in the eye and said, "You wouldn't have agreed anyway." That sentence landed like a gut punch. Because he was right. I wouldn't have agreed. Not in a million years. But the fact that he knew that and did it anyway, that he bypassed our agreement, our shared boundaries, and unilaterally siphoned money from our shared household account into a secret one of his own, told me everything I needed to know about where we were. This wasn't just insecurity anymore. This wasn't a bruised ego or a man going through a tough professional dry spell. This was calculated. This was manipulative. This was about control. I sat with it for a few minutes, just trying to process the layers of what was happening. And then I calmly got out my phone, logged into the banking app, and transferred the $200 back. I changed the password on our joint account. Then I told him we were going to need a very serious conversation about trust, about boundaries, and about what we were actually building, or destroying, with the choices we were making. But before I could even begin that conversation, I had another one. With myself. I had to face a truth that had been brewing beneath the surface for a long time. I had spent years walking on eggshells during Jason's successful side hustle phase. I'd been the cheerleader, the patient partner, the quiet saver. I hadn't asked for more contributions when his business was booming. I hadn't complained when he spent his profits freely. I kept my head down and tried to be supportive, even when I felt frustrated, even when I felt small. Because I didn't want to make things difficult. I didn't want to rock the boat. I thought that was part of being a good partner, holding space for someone else's growth, even when your own feels stalled. But now that the roles were reversed, he wasn't holding that same space for me. He wasn't cheering me on. He wasn't making room. He was clawing at control, trying to invent new rules, new systems, secret accounts, all in an attempt to reinstate a balance that only existed when he was ahead. And instead of working through his feelings, he was punishing me for daring to thrive. That was the moment something shifted in me. I stopped feeling guilty. I stopped second-guessing my success. I stopped asking myself if I should just cave a little to keep the peace. I stopped giving so much weight to his discomfort while mine had gone unacknowledged for so long. I realized that the problem wasn't my income or how I spent it. The problem was that my success highlighted his stagnation, and instead of using that as an opportunity to grow, or even just talk openly with me, he tried to take from me in secret, under the guise of fairness. And I was done being polite about it. Update 3. It happened. We finally had the talk. And it wasn't calm. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't the kind of heart-to-heart you see in movies where someone gets misty-eyed and everything resolves with a hug and a soundtrack swell. No, this was messy. It was raw. There were raised voices, long silences, and moments where I genuinely didn't know if we were going to make it out the other side. But it was honest in a way we hadn't been in a long time. It started one night after dinner, with tension already running high. We'd been dancing around the issue for days since I transferred the $200 back and locked down our joint account. Jason had been sulking, quiet in a storm-brewing way. I'd been firm and cold, keeping my responses short because I knew that one wrong word could open the floodgates. But that night, I decided I couldn't keep living in this limbo. It all came spilling out. Every unspoken thing. Every suppressed feeling. I told him how betrayed I felt by the secret account. I told him how exhausting it had been trying to hold the emotional line while he unraveled quietly in the background, offering nothing but resentment and condescension in return. I told him I didn't sign up for a marriage where success had to be rationed, and joy needed to be approved. He snapped back with his own truths. He admitted he felt irrelevant. That watching me thrive while his business floundered had left him feeling like he was shrinking, like the space he used to occupy as a provider, as someone with creative passion and direction, was dissolving. He said he felt emasculated, that word exactly, and that the loss of income wasn't just financial, it was a blow to his identity. He said he didn't know who he was anymore if he wasn't the guy with the hustle. And every new milestone I hit, every excited review from a customer, every dollar I made was a reminder of what he'd lost. It hit hard. Because even though I'd suspected all of that, hearing it out loud twisted something in my chest. Not in a way that excused his behavior, but in a way that reminded me he's still human. Flawed and proud and scared. I told him that I could understand the pain. That I even remembered feeling it myself, those early years when he was making side money hand over fist and I was scraping together grocery money from coupons and careful budgeting. I told him I had known that ache, the one where you love someone and feel proud of them but also feel left behind. But then I told him what hurt me most wasn't the jealousy. It was the choices he made because of it. That instead of coming to me like a partner, like someone who trusted me, he chose secrecy. He chose control. He chose to weaponize my success, to make me feel like I had to apologize for thriving. And that was the deepest betrayal. Because I'd supported him through every win, and every lull. I never changed the rules when he was flying high. I never made him feel small. All I ever asked for was mutual respect. Honesty. Teamwork. We sat in silence after that. The kind of silence that's heavy with understanding. There were no apologies in that moment, no dramatic gesture of reconciliation. Just a long pause where both of us realized how close we had come to unraveling something we built together, thread by fragile thread. The next day, we started to talk again, but softer, slower. We acknowledged the damage, and then we began to look at how to move forward. Not with resentment or obligation, but with intention. We agreed to revisit our financial structure. Not because I felt guilty. Not because he pressured me. But because we both wanted to get back to a place where our lives felt shared, where we were working towards something together instead of separately guarding our territories. So now, I contribute a small, voluntary percentage of my side business income to our joint account. It's not a huge amount, and it's not on some rigid schedule. But it's there. Not as a tax, not as a punishment, but as a gesture. A commitment to the idea that success, when shared willingly, can lift more than one person. That we can build something better than just fairness, we can build generosity, trust, partnership. Jason is taking steps too. He started therapy, just one session so far, but it's something. He's also reopened his side business on a smaller scale, more for creative fulfillment than income. I think letting go of the pressure to match me dollar for dollar has actually helped him rediscover what he loved about it in the first place. We've set clearer boundaries around money. We talk about things, not as a way to ask for permission, but to stay connected. It's still bumpy. There are days when I catch him looking a little distant when I share a success. There are moments when I have to check myself before falling into old habits of downplaying my achievements to make him more comfortable. But those moments are fewer now. And when they come, we talk about them. We're rebuilding. Slowly. Brick by brick, and not always in a straight line. But for the first time in months, it feels like we're moving forward. Together. Not tugging each other in opposite directions, not fighting for the upper hand, but walking side by side. So no, I don't think I was the asshole. I think I was a woman standing her ground when someone she loved forgot what fairness really looked like. And now. We're learning it all over again together.